Governor Tony Evers says he would sign a Republican-backed bill that will allow election officials to process absentee ballots the day before an election. That is, if the Republican-controlled legislature votes to pass that bill. The idea is to ease the workload of local clerks and their staff and to prevent ballot counting from running late into election night. The state Senate would also need to pass the bill before it makes its way to the governor's desk. Evers' spokesperson said as long as the bill passes in the current form, he'll likely sign it.